Hi there mate, how's it going? It's Benja here, and today we're talking about Detective Superintendent Ian Buckells, who returned to Line of Duty in the Season 6 premiere. It has been 8 years since his first appearance on the show, so I thought this video would be useful to remind everybody about this character and his journey through the Central Police. Back in Season 1, AC-12 is investigating a hotshot detective by the name of Anthony Gates. He is the head of a serious crime unit called TO-20, and Gates' team is investigating the disappearance of Jackie Laverty. But he doesn't disclose the fact that he used to be romantically involved with her. AC-12 is suspicious of Gates because his numbers are too good to be true, and Gates is taken off the case because of his relationship with Laverty. This is where Detective Inspector Buckells comes in. Chief Superintendent Derek Hilton, who we now know is one of the H's, appoints Buckells to the Jackie Laverty case to replace Gates. Gates tries to shepherd Buckells from the get-go, telling him that Laverty's disappearance might have been fake because she wanted to flee the manslaughter charge she was facing. In reality, Gates is saying this because he knows that the organized crime group had Laverty killed and framed Gates to compromise him. You see, Laverty was laundering money for the organized crime group and her accountant discovered the truth. That's why Laverty ran him over and why she was facing a manslaughter charge. The organized crime group didn't want the heat Laverty was bringing, so they got rid of her, and in exchange they added Gates to their ranks by compromising him, by framing him. Buckells explicitly says they are focusing on the money laundering angle, but because Gates is working for the organized crime group, he tries to direct Buckells' efforts towards the possibility that Laverty fled. Gates doesn't want Buckells to find out about the organized crime group connection because that would have terrible consequences for Gates. During these episodes where Buckells is investigating the Laverty disappearance, he doesn't appear to be corrupt, unlike Hilton or Gates. Buckells does what a good detective does and tries to chase all leads. He wants to speak to members of Gates' team, but crucially, when Gates tries to halt his progress, Buckells doesn't push back. He respects the chain of command, he respects his superiors and follows their orders, maybe to a fault. I think this is why Hilton appointed Buckells to this case. Not because Buckells is corrupt per se, but because he's a quote-unquote useful idiot. Buckells is not a disruptor, he is a follower. We see another example of this in the Season 1 finale when the organized crime group leader Tommy Hunter is caught. Matthew Cotton, aka the Caddy, and one of the H's wants to talk to Tommy Hunter privately, and Buckells lets Cotton do that because he knows Cotton is soon going to move up the ranks. Buckells says, quote, "You won't be calling me sir for much longer," end quote. So throughout Season 1, Buckells lets corrupt officers get away with their activities, but there isn't anything here that points to him intentionally helping them. That said, it is possible that Buckells is putting on an act and trying to stay under the radar to avoid detection even by other members of the organized crime group within the Central Police. This could be like a deep undercover mission for him. He could be the ultimate organized crime group operative that no one knows about. In Season 4, Buckells, now a detective chief inspector, replaces Rose Hunley in another controversial case. Rose goes completely rogue and kills a forensic coordinator named Tim following a physical altercation. That altercation comes about because Tim reports her misconduct to anti-corruption as Rose was ignoring protocol to nail a suspect in a kidnapping and murder case. Rose has to be taken off that case because AC-12 is investigating her, and that's how Buckells gets involved and takes charge. Rose is friends with Hilton from the academy and she is extremely smart, which means that she plays Buckells like a fiddle and still affects the murder and kidnapping case even though she has been transferred to the major violent crime department. She's able to keep an eye on her former case by conducting joint meetings. Buckells is against this at first, but he doesn't do anything when he hears that Hilton is okay with it. Hilton is the assistant chief constable at this point, and he is very powerful, so Buckells doesn't go against him. Kate, who is undercover, asks Buckells to let her know what's going on, but because Buckells knows Kate from season 1 as an undercover officer, he doesn't tell her anything. He doesn't want to help anti-corruption because that would piss off Hilton. This goes back to what I was saying before. He listens to high-ranking officers like Hilton and doesn't go against their decisions because he himself wants to rise up the ranks. Buckells is a disaster on this kidnapping and murder case. He buys into falsified evidence, arrests wrong suspects, and plays right into Rose Huntley's hand. And Rose is eventually able to clear her name, at least for a short period of time, and she takes back this case from Buckells. Like I said, Buckells hasn't done anything impressive with this case, but that doesn't matter because he was able to go unnoticed, which I suppose is his goal. He doesn't piss off Hilton, and that's a win for Buckells. Because of that, Buckells keeps failing upwards as he becomes a detective superintendent. He is in charge of Hillside Lane Station at the start of season 6. He messes up the surveillance paperwork related to a suspect in the murder of investigative journalist Gail Vella, which halts the surveillance for 3 hours, potentially allowing the real suspect, Carl Banks, to flee. Additionally, Buckells doesn't sign off on the deployment of an arrest team until he gets the go-ahead from his superiors in the morning. He also gets extremely angry after learning that the senior investigating officer, Joanne Davidson, wasn't able to nail Terry Boyle for murdering Gail Vella. He says, "What am I gonna tell the chief?" Once again showing that the thing he cares about the most is impressing his superiors. But here's the thing, after going back and watching the episode again, I realized that Buckells wasn't at fault for the surveillance mistake. At the start of the episode, Joe explicitly asked Buckells to sign off the directed surveillance authority when she should have asked for the intrusive surveillance authority that would have allowed them to use high-powered lenses. The surveillance team had to stop their activities for 3 hours because Joe messed up, not Buckells. And not only did Joe make this mistake about the surveillance authority, but she was also the one that spotted the getaway van en route to the suspect's house. So Joe looks a million times more guilty than Buckells. The guy simply granted the senior investigating officer the type of surveillance she requested. Buckells didn't do anything wrong. You could argue that he should have immediately deployed the arrest team that night, but I kinda get where he was coming from in regards to not completely trusting the informant. The informant was doing illegal work that could get this video demonetized, so I'm not gonna spell it out, but it starts with an S and ends with an X. You know the type of worker I mean. But my point is, we heard Buckells belittling those types of workers in season 4 when he was chatting with Hilton. So the writers have already established 2 seasons ago that Buckells doesn't hold those workers in high regard, and therefore it makes sense for him to hold off on deploying the arrest team based on that informant's intel alone. If we accept that explanation, and if we take into consideration that Joe was the one that messed up in the surveillance matter, and if we also think about her diverting the convoy en route to the suspect, I think Joe looks a lot more compromised than Buckells. The organized crime group went to the trouble of ordering a hit on a journalist that was looking into the links between them and the police, so I think it is entirely reasonable to speculate that the organized crime group would go after the senior investigating officer on the murder case as well, who is Joe, not Buckells. I think they threatened Joe by using her mother. Also, the locks on Joe's door say a lot in my opinion. It shows us that she feels vulnerable, and the organized crime group is the reason for that vulnerability. I believe they told Joe to mess up the surveillance and to divert the convoy en route to the suspect. But where does that leave Buckells? Does all of this information from season 6 and from earlier seasons exonerate him? Well, absolutely not, but I think it makes it a lot less likely that he is the 4th and final H. I think he might be slightly bent, but I don't think he's an out-and-out organized crime group operative like Derek Hilton or Matthew Cotton. I think Buckells has been manipulated and used by organized crime group operatives, but I personally don't buy the theory that he is the fourth H. I think that operative, the fourth H, will be older in age and he will be a more senior officer within the police force. In conclusion, looking back at Buckells' character history has led me to believe that he is not the fourth H. Well, what do you think about Ian Buckells? Could he really be the final H? And did you find this video interesting or helpful? Leave your comments down below, like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe for more movie reviews and TV show breakdowns. That's it for now, take care and see you in the next video.